What's up, guys? So we are here to talk to you today about the American Thin Press Neutral Grip Bar. This is one of our newer bars, and when Dave first brought this into the gym, he had a very pleased look on his face. Now that I've had some time to play around with it, I can certainly see why. So the first thing that I want to cover about how you can use this thin press bar is first going to be for overhead press. So first off, I want to show you where most people are at when they set up for a military press or an overhead press with a straight barbell. Now, most people don't have enough mobility, unfortunately, to overhead press with a straight bar. And what we usually end up doing then is, instead of getting into a nice stacked position here, where the wrists can be straight and the elbows can be either directly underneath or even slightly in front of the bar, we end up here and with the wrist cocked back. Now, what this ends up doing is not only costing you a lot of weight, in terms of you can't move as much because we've got this inefficient start position, but it ends up causing discomfort on the wrist and the elbow for a lot of people, which means that then they can't overhead press regularly or a lot of weight or for a lot of volume. If we come over here now and we look at the thin press bar, I'm going to make a controversial statement and say that I think this is a better implement for most people than like a log. Now, logs are great. They allow us to use that neutral grip. They're going to have a lot of benefits, especially if you're a strongman competitor, of course. But there's a couple of problems with them. First off, for most people, we are going to be gripping a log in a set place. So if you're very large or very narrow, the grip on that log is not going to suit your build, and you might not be able to get into a good start position. The other problem we have is the diameter of the log means that we're going to have to be in a very arched and leant back position at the start, which again might limit how much weight we can use or how much volume we can do before postural strength or lower back fatigue becomes a problem. Whereas with this thin press bar, now that we've got this thinner width here and the ability to vary our grip position, I can grab this wherever I want and start in a position that mimics where I would be in a military press. So I can have my hips and ribs stacked, my posture nice and tall, and achieve that same stacked position here that I would like to get to in the bar. So the difference is now, because I've got a neutral grip, I don't need as much rotation from my shoulder to get into that ideal start position. So I'm going to be able to find it easier to get a neutral wrist here and get a better start position without sacrificing our position here. So for me, I can go, this would be my regular grip. I can get the forearm stacked and I can press straight up without any real compensation and leaning back like I would have to do with a log press. Now, the other cool thing, of course, then is the multi-grip option here means that I can do my close grip military press if I want to make the lockout harder and make the triceps work more, or I can go to a wider grip and still then work the front delts and pec minor a bit more and make that bottom half harder. And it means that, say you've got someone who's got very wide clavicles, very long arms and needs that wider position, they can go ahead and grab it out here and get in a good position for them. Whereas then you might have like a lighter weight or female lifter with shorter clavicles, they can go ahead and grab it nice and narrow and get that same position. Now, we're gonna get a very similar benefit when we use this bar for incline pressing, which we're gonna show you now. Okay, so somewhere where these bars deserve a little bit more love is for incline pressing. Now, we all know that they're great for regular and flat bench pressing. We've known that for a long time. But for incline pressing, they have an even greater benefit. And the reason for this is that when we're using a log or traditional neutral grip bars that have a wider width or diameter, the problem is when we do an incline press and we need to hit that high touch point up here, we can't actually get that because the bar or the log is too big. So what happens is then we have to touch lower down the body so that we don't decapitate ourselves with the bar, basically. And because of that, we can't get this nice stacked position at the bottom. What we end up with is the forearms angled this way, putting more stress on the rotator cuff, making it a more inefficient movement overall. So if we just have a look now at what I'm talking about from the side, where you can see the touch point, when I come over here now, if I was using a traditional log, or maybe a wider neutral grip bar, if I were to come down, I would need it to be about here so that I don't end up hitting myself in the face, which means my elbows are gonna be behind the wrist and I'm not gonna have an efficient bar path or force production into the bar. Whereas because of this narrower bar here, now I can bring this straight down I can keep the elbows stacked under the wrist, and I can achieve this high touch point that I wouldn't be able to achieve if I was using a log or a more traditional neutral grip bar. So this is going to make all your incline pressing considerably more efficient and allow you to use more load. And then also, let's not forget, that thinner bar is going to be more stable laterally in your hands. So it's not going to be wobbling back and forth as much as a log or a wider bar will be, which is going to mean that you're able to press more weight overhead, and you're especially going to be more stable in those lockout positions. Now, next up, we're going to look at how we can use these to level up your pull-ups and your push-ups. Right, so what about using the thin press bar for your accessory work? We know it's great for our incline presses, our bench presses, our overhead presses, even our bent over, our pendlay rows. But what about for our smaller movements? Now, first off, we've got the option of using it for inverted rows. Okay, so we can set it up in your rack like so. And once again, we have the option of doing it with vertical, different grips here. We can adjust the difficulty or which muscles we're using depending on what grip we want to use. You could even do like a cool mechanical drop set, for example, where you're going to start nice and wide, isolate the upper back more, the rear delts and the rhomboids, and you can work your way in to a more bicep dominant pull as you fatigue, and basically treat it like a burnout kind of set, right? So we can have it set here in our rack. We can start out nice and wide here, and then we're going to have the elbows more flared. Plank up, keep the elbows wide, and keep it very upper back dominant. And then once you get pretty fatigued here, you come in, bring it a little bit narrow. The elbows will be a tiny bit more tucked. You're going to get a little bit more lat involvement, so on and so forth. And then eventually, you will end up on this most narrow grip here with the biceps considerably more involved, and you'll be able to keep going. You could do like 1 or 2 sets of that as like a burnout at the end of your pulling work, your deadlift workout, whatever. You get a great workout from that. Now, for those of you that are working out at home in like a garage and you've got a low ceiling, maybe you can't have a cool pull-up handle on your rack like we have here. So you can go ahead and take this bar, set it up as high as you can in your rack, put it up there, and now you can do pull-ups inside your rack with a multitude of grips. And again, the cool thing about this one, maybe compared to wider, more chunky bars, is that when you're using this for your inverted rows or your pull-ups, whatever it might be, it's going to be wobbling around much less. It's going to be nice and stable and more centered, so you can push considerably harder on it. Now, the other one we could do as well then would be push-ups, right? So not everyone is going to be able to do push-ups on the floor with their wrists bent back like this, and not everyone is going to be able to do it with their wrists out straight. Sure, you could buy like a pair of push-up handles or whatever it might be, or we could come here, and now we have the option to do them once again in a multitude of grips. So that could be yet another option for a mechanical drop set. We can start out nice and wide at whatever height makes it difficult for you. Start off with your wide grip, and then as you get fatigued, you could eventually work your way in to doing what would almost be like a diamond push-up with your hands almost together and the elbows squeezed in nice and close. Now, once again, if you want a really good finisher for your push workout, what you can do is start with this nice and low in the rack, do a couple of sets or a set with whatever grip width works best for you. As you get fatigued, put it up a little bit higher in the rack. Turn it into an incline push-up and keep going. Hip fatigue there, go up a little bit higher until you're kind of around hip height or a bit higher than that. One set of that, your chest, your front delts, your triceps are pretty much smoked, and you can head on home if you need to. So last but certainly not least, now we're gonna look at how you can use this bar to train the most important thing of all, which is your arms. All right, so here we are now training arms with the thin press bar. Now, a big problem that a lot of people have with tricep extensions is struggling to keep their elbows tucked in, right? We all end up way out here taking a lot of that stretch off the triceps. Now, we can use the angled handles on this bar to help us keep the elbows more tucked. So if you look at how we've got this orientated right now, when I grip this, my little finger is going to be narrower or closer in than my thumb, right? So my hands are going to be like this. Now, when my hands are in this position, that makes it considerably more easier for me to tuck and squeeze my elbows in, which means now when I'm doing my tricep extensions, it's going to be much harder for me to flare and turn it into like a pseudo press, right? So from this position now, I can use whatever width is comfortable for me and my clavicle width. Now the cool thing here is, compared to say a wider bar would be, now not only do I have this extra amount of tuck that's facilitated by the handle, but now I can get more range of motion because the bar is thinner, so I can go further before I end up hitting myself with the bar. So my triceps can get a considerably better stretch and more load, and also it's going to be easier for me to keep my elbows in tucked as opposed to flared out here, where a lot of us end up when we're doing our tricep extensions. Now, as a bonus, one cool thing we could do here at the end of our pressing workout, say we got 10 minutes before we get home, and we want to get pumped up, we could go, right, I'm gonna go tricep extension to failure, right? So like elbow super tucked, just bend the elbow, keep the upper arm nice and vertical. We're gonna go to, like, say, near failure on that. I could put it back in with the same load on the bar. I don't even have to get up. I could go a touch wider, say here, and I could do like a modified JM press. So I could like kind of roll it down and then roll into it and press it up from here. So basically turn it into a pseudo JM press, half skull crusher, kind of half close grip bench. I could go to very near failure on that. So my triceps are kind of burning out at this point. And now I could take a grip width that is akin to my regular close grip bench or regular bench press grip. I can go real tucked, and I can bring that same weight down here now and get a bunch of reps in here until near failure. And again, within one set there, I pushed my triceps as well as my front delts and my pecs pretty hard, got a lot of good work done. I've got one bar and one weight there. I haven't had to change anything. So now the other cool thing, for most of us, especially if we've been bench pressing a long time, right? We're not very good at this. Most of us don't have a lot of supination, which is fine, but you should probably work on it at some point. But in the meantime, for a lot of us, even getting a hold of like an easy curl bar can be quite uncomfortable, can be difficult. It means that we can't really use it to train our biceps well. Again, here, thanks to the angle of the grip, we can go in like what we'd say is a semi-supinated grip, and we can do our curls from this position much more comfortably. And I don't even have to hold the bar. It's basically resting on the top of my palms there. And because we've got a thicker diameter here than you would get on a typical easy curl bar, because my hands can now be a little bit more open, my forearm flexors and extensors can relax a little bit more, which means generally I'm going to feel less tightness and less inhibition there. So we've basically the equivalent of doing a better easy curl with kind of fat grips on the bar, all together in one. And once again, if you wanted to, see again, we got 5 minutes to finish our bicep workout, we could work our grip inwards so that we finish that mechanical drop set with that strongest position there, starting wide and working in, and getting a load of maximally effective reps in a very short period of time. So as you're seeing, I would hope by this point, there really is a lot of things that you can do with this bar. And there's quite a lot of things that this thinner structure has opened up in terms of possibilities, especially for like the tricep extensions, in my opinion, and the incline presses. But just overall, that thinner construction makes it so much more stable to hold in this position that I think you're going to find that as and when you do use it for any heavy overhead pressing or bench pressing work, it's going to feel considerably more stable and solid in your hands, which is going to lead to more load and more growth. So go get one.